Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to Sonic Adventure 2 tutorials. Today going to be looking at Green Forest, and this is more of an intermediate level tutorial aimed at applying more tech, more small skips everywhere, and hopefully trying to get your time down without using the most advanced skip in the game, or the stage rather, which is the Green Forest wall run. So this is going to hopefully get you around about a 140 time, maybe just under it. If you're playing the stage pretty well, like, you absolutely don't need huge skips to get under a 140 in this stage. But there's quite a lot to talk about in this stage because there are so many like little things that you can do in each section, so let's just dive right in. So as in the beginner tutorial, which you should have seen if you're doing this, just neutral stick spin dash down the slope. And as you're reaching this section here, ideally you want to just light dash on... Actually, you don't want to light dash on this trail, I'm not sure. I can't remember. Either way, it's not super important whether you light dash on this trail or don't, but you want to still keep using the bottom path as regular. And there's a couple of awkward like slope mechanics that can happen to force you to get ungrounded from the floor. But the idea is just to spin dash down here as much as possible. So that was a pretty good example of spin dashing down in fairly straight fashion. You're going to come across this speed pad here, which launches you straight towards this section here. This is a little more awkward than it looks to navigate correctly. You have this mushroom on the right, which is a solid object, and you have this moss mound on the left, which again, I think it's actually a solid object. So if I like veer too far to the left, or I'll just run into it. Well, it's a solid slope at any rate. So it's possible in some circumstances to basically have your momentum disrupted by the moss mound. And you can definitely have it disrupted by the mushroom because it's flat out a solid object. You can see that Sonic's pushing against it. Either way. So you want to try and get through there as clean as possible. And you want to just try and angle to the left here. This is actually a very tricky hallway to get through as fast as possible with full momentum conservation, because you can see that it's easy to get a pseudo wall run here, and it's difficult to stay grounded and keep a smooth left turn. If you angle too far to the left, then you're going to end up running into this wall, which forces you to slow right down like that. There are also certain ways that you can run into this enemy which stop you dead in your tracks. If we restart, we may see one of those, but the idea is just to try and take this hallway as smooth as you can, but it takes, honestly, quite a bit of practice. So I got unlatched there, but it's fine. So I generally actually opt to avoid the enemy there. I just curve around it to the right a little bit, and you still want to hit that speed pad in ball form and maintain the ball form going all the way up here. And you can see that I launched off that zipper on the very, very right edge of it. This is going to cause a slight problem here because I'm going towards this slanted log here. And if you're on the very right side, then Sonic doesn't actually have enough height to completely clear this log. Like, I'm going to clip against it and I'm probably going to land around here. Okay, I still managed to get over it, but it wasn't like clean getting over it. It loses like a little bit of time. But either way, it's nothing huge as long as you get over it. So something that definitely wasn't talked about in the beginner tutorial is using spin dash storage in this area. Spin dash storage is used to cut down the time of your spin dash charge slightly. The best way to illustrate it is on the next set of springs here. So we have this spring set here, and if you look at the input cam, I'm going to not use any B input going into the spring. I'm going to start using B input now, and I'm just going to continue to hold it, or X input in this case. And I'm not charging a spin dash at all, just because of how the game treats that. Like, I wasn't able to start using a spin dash, or start storing the input for it, during the vine animation, so it just didn't come out. So comparatively, if I just take the vine, and then I start charging once I land, it's the same as you'd expect to see. Like, Sonic just starts charging a spin dash as normal once I'm here, once I start using the input. However, spin dash storage is used by using that action input before I hit the speed pad, or before I hit the spring here. Because there is the delay period between using the action input and the spin dash coming out, which is to say it's between now and now. Like, my first now was when I hit the X button, and then the second now is when the spin dash animation came out, like that. The game basically tracks that time, and in a nutshell, the time taken between holding the X button and the spin dash coming out, like I say, the game tracks it, and if you're interrupted, such as by entering the spring and entering the vine swinging animation, the value remains the same, as in like the countdown value towards the spin dash animation starting. So if most of that time is taken up by holding X, say now, and then running into the spring, then I will get what basically amounts to an instantaneous spin dash when I get out of it. Because the game basically remembers the amount of time I've had the action button held down before I entered the spring. Such as this. You can see how quick that spin dash came out after exiting the vine. Like, that was much faster than waiting to land and then using the X button to charge another spin dash manually. So in action, it looks something like this. So I start holding it very early, and then I get almost an immediate spin dash coming out of there. So that's something to remember on both of those vine sections right there. That is something that's very possible to use. So, the first loop skip here is, in a word, kind of awkward. You generally want to jump over these speed pads right here, because they lock your speed and they also lock your direction. And if you try and do the regular loop skip, which is performed by like jumping or spin dashing around here, and going in this direction to try and just skip this entire section, if you've hit the speed pads, then you're not really going to have an easy time of moving, such as like right this. You can see that I was facing to the right, but I barely moved at all because of the way that the speed pads locked my controls. Whereas if I jump over the speed pads, then like you again have problems depending where you are and with the loop speed triggers, but they're going to interfere with your movement a lot less if you just don't hit the speed pads at all. And it is an option to just jump from the loop there, but what I prefer to do is, like I say, jump over the speed pads, and then around this spot I start charging a spin dash, and yeah, this is a little difficult to like illustrate and or describe, but if you can get a spin dash around here and angle it like that, with quite a bit of upright, then you can hopefully get quite a nice position and momentum to be able to just homing attack cancel through to the next section. So I'm going to try and show what I mean here. Something like that. Let's get out of here and die again. If it's looking like really, really bad, if it's looking like you have a bad position and you're just not going to be able to get enough distance to make it, you can bail out by landing on the zipper that the game is like trying to aim you towards by just taking the loop normally. Like if that's looking not friendly, then you can instead go down here and just land in this section like normal, and you're you're minimizing your losses really by doing that. So as you get into this section, it's generally easiest to just spin dash towards these speed pads here. And depending on your speed, when you reach this vertex here, Sonic will either just stick to the ground as he is here and go into these speed pads, which is preferable, or he'll unlatch and fly into the air a little bit. If he flies into the air, I don't think it's 100% clear what the best thing to do is, and I'll show why I say that. Because, like, I'm going to try and get myself to fly in the air. And it's really hard to do bad movement when you need it for illustrative purposes. Let's just get these enemies out of the way. So here's a fly into the air. Like I say, you can see that Sonic's unlatched from the ground. The instinct here is just to land directly on the speed pads. But the problem with this is if I land on the speed pads like this, then Sonic is going to take this half loop in the running animation, which is actually significantly slower than taking it in the ball form animation. And so it's a bit unclear what the correct thing to do here is, because if you want to get back in ball form, you need to do another spin dash charge, which takes a bit of time. But I'm going to be able to demonstrate here, going through this half loop with the running animation, and then with the ball form animation, and you'll be able to visually see that the ball form one is significantly faster. So that's what it looks like just with running speed. Well, with this speed pad as well, should use it as a control, because these could have different speed values. Yeah, so that's what it looks like with running speed. And this is what it looks like with ball speed. Like, that just looks way faster to my eyes. And it generally is. So when you get to this slope here, I've already gone directionless, and this is no accident. The problem with these half-loop structures in general, like the one that I'm currently standing on, it's obviously not a single plane. Like, it's not a perfectly curved half-loop. What it is a series of vertexes. Like, you can see that this is a vertex, this is a vertex, this is a vertex, etc. So there are essentially a bunch of different planes that Sonic can stand on. This is the one that goes directly down, and like this one does not say go directly down. You can see that Sonic is angling towards the center again, whereas once you're on this one, he aims directly down. This is the same trick used at the very start of the stage, where you just use a directionless spin dash. If you're on this central vertex and do it directionless, please game, then you'll just go straight down very easily, and it looks very smooth. But if you're not on that central vertex, then it doesn't quite work as smoothly. Like, I'm using no input, and you can see it's not exactly the result that you want. So getting onto this central vertex from the slanted camera that you have here, like, it's not as easy as it seems. If you can land here, then like I say, it's more optimal to do a neutral spin dash like this. But if it looks like you're not going to end up on the neutral vertex, then just hold up on the control stick and then just continue it down like that. It's not a big deal if you don't get it. As in the beginner tutorial, if you can get the top spring, it's much better to do that, if possible. If not, then again, it's not something huge to worry about. It's just a slight optimization to grab the top spring here if you can, because it will land you further along the next platform, which is obviously slightly faster. That's middle spring, so yeah, a little slower. So if this loop skip really intimidates you, you can get the checkpoint. It costs very little time to do it, but this loop skip is honestly very elementary, where you just want to get on the right hand side here. You have a nice slope to work with, so if I do a spin dash jump here, it's going to get me extra height and distance anyway, because I'm on an upward slope. So you want to just do a spin dash jump straight up, and then angle towards the right, so you can just land on the other side of this loop. Now, this section right here, you could hopefully see right there in the top right of the screen where I get the action prompts. Just past it a little bit. It's not displaying during the pause screen, but basically there's a short window where I have a prompt for a light dash, and that is right here. And it is this light dash trail right here with these 3 rings. This is something that you should be going for in general, because the optimal light dash is the one that just sends you along these 3 rings and sends you straight into the speed pad. It is by far the fastest way to take this section. But whether you get that specific light dash depends entirely on your position when you take this spring. And like, this is not like 100% consistent. Your results are just going to vary a little here. There are a few different light dashes you can get here, but my method for trying to get the correct one is to try and hit this part of the speed pad, like the left to middle part of the speed pad. Like, I'm not directly in the center of the speed pad, and I'm not aiming for like the left part of the speed pad. I'm trying to aim like for this general part of the speed pad here, but again, not entirely consistent, and there are other parts of the speed pad that work as well. Like, I've hit the very right part of the speed pad and it's worked before. This is kind of something that you just get a bit of a feel for, I suppose, and even then, sometimes it doesn't really work. But it's generally worth going for this, because although there are a few different light dashes you can get, only one of them is flat out bad. Like, there's only one of them that will launch you completely in the wrong direction and cause you to flat out lose time. So I'm going to go for this, and I'm just going to mash B on the way up. Hopefully I'm going to get the right light dash. We'll see. So no, I didn't. So this is like not an optimal light dash, but it's again one that I can easily work with, because this at least prevents me from having the animation of hitting the spring, going all the way up, and waiting to fall before I land on this platform. But I don't want to immediately jump and homing attack for the spring, because the capsule actually takes priority in this spot as the homing attack target. if I try and homing attack towards the spring, Sonic is going to try to hit the capsule, and that causes really bad things to happen in this spot. So I hit the capsule like no problem there, which is nice. I'm going to try and simulate what would have happened there. No. I'm going to die anyway to try and reset the light dash trail and see if I can get a different light dash. Because there's a checkpoint right here, so this is fairly easy to test on repeated attempts. So I've got the same one again. So this is what I mean by the homing attack priority. So that time I actually got the spring, which is very helpful of the game. Thanks, game. And that's an example of what can really, really go wrong. So that's about where I landed from the light dash stopping. And you can see that if you just try and go straight for the spring there, you don't really get the result that you want. So if you're right here, the safest thing to do is wait until Sonic is facing up, deliberately homing attack right for the capsule, and then just homing attack onto the spring. Like that. So, let's try hitting a different part of the spring and see if we get like a different light dash result. Same one again. Like I say, your mileage is really going to vary here. The best case scenario is that you go straight across the spring, but it's not always going to like super consistently happen. Same here as in the beginner tutorial, just make sure you're high enough to hit these targets. And right here, there is another skip that we're able to do. So this is the bungee skip for Green Forest. I mentioned in the beginner tutorial that taking the intended path here and taking the bungee does lose quite a bit of time compared to skipping this section. The next part of the stage, if I can use the mouse to illustrate, is like down here. It's like down here and it's way, way down here is the approximate area that you want to land. So if I get over here, get hopefully on top of this structure here, which is awkward. And if I just like spin dash in this general direction, yeah. The camera got inverted there, but this is exactly where I was talking about. So that is the area that you're trying to go. But to do a spin dash jump directly over there is a little more advanced than it seems, because there's a couple of things that can get in your way here. First of all, you need to make sure that you go leftwards enough to completely clear this ledge here. Because if you clip it while you're doing a spin dash jump, it will remove your homing attack. And even with a good angle, then there are a lot of spots where you kind of need the homing attack to be able to make it easily in one piece. I mean, if you have a very, very clean jump and a good angle, you won't need the homing attack, but it's very helpful to have it. But more important than that is that on this right-hand side here, like in this general area, there's an invisible wall that will just stop my forward progress. So if I go too far to the right, and if I try taking the straightest path possible to where I need to go, I'm going to hit an invisible wall here. See how I'm just not going anywhere? That's the invisible wall in full effect. So that's what you really want to go leftwards enough to avoid, as well as the lip of the ledge. You need to go leftwards enough to avoid that invisible wall. I'm going to try to intentionally hit the ledge, though I'm not very good at messing this trick up. Okay, well I didn't get enough height, which basically simulated it. I could hear that I collided with it, and I could see that my aura disappeared. So I'm going in basically the right direction here. But whether I'm going to make it without the homing attack is a different story, we'll see. Yeah, you can see that I'm not making it there. My momentum was stopped from landing, and I also lost my homing attack, so that's something you really want to avoid. The extra detail to remember here is that the camera is not very conveniently placed for letting you see where you're going. So even if you get a really clean jump like this, then you're going to kind of struggle with the camera not being very friendly. And that's what I mean about sometimes really needing the homing attack to have a good time there. Like, I wouldn't have made that if I didn't have the homing attack. And the camera really wasn't helping me out here. But you can basically force the camera to work for you. First of all, let's just go very liberally to the left, curve around a bit. So there's an example of making it without needing the homing attack. But making the camera work for you is honestly as simple as waiting for it to get locked when it reaches this point, when it's stuck against the ledge like this. At that point, you can actually just tap a camera button, L or R, I just use L, And tapping the camera button at that point will change the camera mode to free camera, and it will actually force the camera through. It will immediately follow you if you do that when the camera gets stuck. Such as like that. I can immediately see where I'm going. And that gives you a much easier time of seeing where you are. As for this last loop skip here, there is again a couple of things to note here. I see people doing this a couple of different ways, and there are a couple of things that people consistently do to make this harder than it should be. The first thing to note is that this isn't a spin dash jump. I see people doing this a lot, making it into a spin dash jump, and although this works to clear the gap, it's not the preferred method. Because jumping cuts your air momentum a lot. While you are jumping, your forward momentum in air is cut quite a bit. So what you instead want to do is you still want to start in this general area, and the control stick angle for this is like kind of precise, but just simply what you want to do is charge a spin dash and let it go. You don't even want to do a spin dash hover by holding A before you release B. Like, that's not even the preferred method. You just want to charge a spin dash and simply let it go. Which will look like this. And with a good angle, you can make it through without too much difficulty, and the best case scenario is that with a really good angle, you can even go for a loop speed burst as you get back through the loop. That's not really good enough there. It's easiest to gauge this if you target this with some run-up, so I'm going to just destroy the enemies here to make sure they don't get in my way. And I'm going to approach this section again. So generally the best thing to do is, this is the area that you're going to like be landing-ish from doing the bungee skip. So you can chain one spin dash, and then you can have the second one like primed right here to be able to do this. And then with the correct control stick angle, again, which is like more up with some right, I find, then hopefully you'll be sailing along here without too much difficulty, and the idea is to be able to get a loop speed burst like that. It's a little risky if you aren't looking like you're going to get through the loop properly. Oh, and yeah, this is why angle is surprisingly important here, because it's quite easy to unintentionally either hit this ledge here, or even hit this part here. Worst case scenario is that you're going to end up with skewed gravity, which will more or less completely prevent you from being able to do this properly. But if it doesn't look like you're going to make it cleanly, then you should just homing attack cancel to get through the loop without risking getting a bad loop speed burst which sends you straight into the water, to just make sure that you make it like that. The biggest culprit for not having enough distance here, like, I'm going to facilitate a decent setup, but the biggest culprit for not having enough distance is by angling too high. So using... oh, it's more side that I want, actually. Yeah, because the more that you push it up, generally the lower angle you're going to have, which is more friendly, but you also risk having other unintended side effects happening. Whereas the more you angle to the side, the more height you're going to get, but you don't have as much forward momentum, so now you can see I'm clearly not going to make it to the loop. So here I pretty much need to use a homing attack cancel to make it. Like, without the cancel I probably wouldn't have made it there. So more side is safer in terms of you won't have any problems with this ledge and this ledge, but then you're also not really going to have enough distance to make it across the loop, so it's kind of like, well, pick your poison. Whereas that's about what you want, and then homing attack as you're getting through the loop to try and get a good homing attack loop speed. This section pretty much unchanged from the beginner tutorial, except you just want to consistently go for this spring right here, if possible. So, a pretty long-winded description of Green Forest as a stage, fully. But as I mentioned, there is a hell of a lot to talk about in this stage, and we're going to try and bring it all together in, hopefully, one attempt. And this is hopefully going to come out as around a 140-ish level time. fine. Minor mistakes. They're going to happen from time to time in runs. And hill vertex stuff can go squiffy as well. So these are all minor things, nothing really to stress over. Okay, so I wasn't on the neutral vertex, so I needed to use up stick there to be safe. Let's grab the checkpoint to be safe. So that was fine. It wasn't the perfect light dash, but it got me through. Make sure you're high enough to hit these targets. L to reset the camera. Ah, bad. Bad, bad, bad. So that right there was caused by this vertex here. Like, there is a vertex when you cross here. You can see that Sonic changes his angle there. It's amazing that such a small vertex can cause stuff like that to happen, but it honestly can. I got the checkpoint there, so I can just restart from here. But it was important for me to show why that occurred. Either way, same basic trick. Even got a bit of loop speed, which is nice. You wouldn't have the bounce bracelet here in story, so that's not going to happen, but this is coming out as around a 140 time. This is going to be a 141 by the looks of it. Yeah. Yes! So that's Green Forest as an intermediate player. It is honestly a very technical stage. There is a lot that could go wrong, and more than anything else, you just need to practice the stage a lot. But if there's anything you didn't really understand or want some clarification on, feel free to leave a comment, or as always, you can just get me directly on Discord, and I'm happy to help out in any way I can. So, hope you guys found this educational, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.